Well, let's speak to football financial expert Kieran Maguire now joins the show. All right, Kieran?
Kieran?
Hi guys, how are we doing?
Yeah, we're good. Look, obviously this hearing's coming up. Manchester City, 115 charges. It's been a big talking point for the last few years,
Yeah.
feels like. It starts Monday. How long is it going to last?
It's probably going to last somewhere in the region of 6 to 8 weeks. The Everton case took around about 5 or 6 days, but there is 115 charges, as we know. It's covering a period of 8 to 9 years. There were around about 40,000 pieces of evidence shown in terms of documents for Everton. So you can multiply that by 10 quite easily in respect of Manchester City. So there's an awful lot to show from both the Premier League side and also in terms of Manchester City's defence.
Kieran, because there are so many, I'm guessing there's different grades of how severe the penalties will be. Which of the ones do you think that they will want to make stick?
I think the most serious allegations are the ones that Manchester City received money from the owner, and that money was disguised as sponsorship from companies in Abu Dhabi. Because if that is true, and at present Manchester City, of course, are saying it's not true, and you're innocent until proven otherwise, that's a pretty significant corporate fraud. You've effectively got the club misrepresenting how the money was received. You've got the sponsor doing it. And you could also argue that the auditors must have been aware of something, or they should have been aware of something when they were doing their job. So it's a big group of organisations, and this is apparently taking place over a long period of time. So it's surprising, if that was the case, that it never leaked out before.
Look, Manchester City, I feel like they've been quite probably behind closed doors. They're not, but to the public, they've been quite relaxed about this whole thing. They feel confident that they've done nothing wrong.
Yeah, they do feel aggrieved. They didn't like the way that the papers were served on the club. They genuinely feel that they've done nothing wrong, certainly as far as the public facing. I lived in Manchester for 40 years, and you get to know people. They are very confident that they've got a very good defence case. And if they are successful in defending themselves, then the Premier League is going to look very silly.
Well, they're already reeling after the way that Leicester wriggled out of their situation. They don't really want. It won't look great, will it? If they come away from this and Man City get their name cleared, it won't look great on the Premier League at all.
That's right. It also doesn't reflect particularly well on the Premier League handbook. That if you go through this thing, it's hundreds of pages long. You would have thought it would have been stress tested before they published it and they made the clubs comply with it. And as we saw with Leicester, it was relatively easy for Leicester's legal team to say, well, actually, we weren't a Premier League club at the 30th of June 2023. And that was quite an open and shut case. And the Premier League has incurred a lot of costs as well. If you take a look at the Everton case, the Premier League's legal costs there were almost £5 million. Well, you can add a zero to that if the Manchester City case is going to take 10 weeks to be heard.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they do get found guilty on some charges, what sort of punishment do you think we're looking at here?
Well, it can't really be a financial punishment. That would make everybody think the whole thing was a waste of time. So if you take a look at the hearing for both Everton and Nottingham Forest, the commissions both said this is a minor breach of the rules. Now, if the allegations against Manchester City are proven, that surely has to be a major breach of the rules, effectively that the club misrepresented the money coming into the club. The club also has been accused of disguising payments to players and managers through third parties, effectively being paid offshore, being paid via Abu Dhabi for services provided by members of staff. And that is also completely against the rules, one would think, although it could be that it's within the Premier League rules. So we would have to be looking at a very significant points deduction. If all 115 charges are proven, then you would imagine that the points deduction would be somewhere in the region of 60 to 100 points, on the basis that they would want the club to have suffered enough to be heading out of the division.
60 to 100 points.
I mean,
so in 8 weeks' time, Manchester City could be in a relegation fight.
Well, whilst the hearing will finish in 8 weeks, if you've got all of that evidence to present to the commission, they're probably going to take 3 to 4 months, because they've got to rule on each of those 115 charges separately as to whether or not they believe Manchester City to be guilty. If they are guilty of all of them, then it's got to be so severe that any club that ever thinks of going down that route again will realise that it would be a very detrimental thing for that club's future.
Kieran, most people that I speak to, and I kind of know where they're coming from, of the belief that Man City will somehow either they'll prove their innocence or they will manage to find a way to get out of this. How serious do you think? So I'll rephrase the question. Do you think that there's a chance they will get off on every single charge?
They are very confident that they will say, first of all, the allegations that they didn't cooperate with the Premier League. Well, why should they? Because they believe that the Premier League's case is based on hacked emails, which have been criminally obtained. Then you've got to say, well, you've got to look at the context of the contents of those emails. They will have people who potentially might say it was not, you've misinterpreted the contents and so on. So could they defend themselves successfully? They wouldn't have employed the lawyers that they have done.
Okay, yeah.
If that was the case.
So that's the question Jay asked. When do we expect to come for the punishment? If there is a punishment, when do we expect to hear from that? You're saying sometime in the new year?
Yeah, I think we're probably looking at February or March. Right. The commission will have to go away, and you also the 3 people who are hearing the case. Yep. They're very senior people, so they've already got work commitments in October, November, December. Getting all 3 of them around the table at the same time will be quite a challenge.
And then, of course, you'd have thought that Manchester City will appeal any punishment, and then we're going to be rolling in to next season. It might be one of those scenarios that we go into June, we don't fully know exactly what league Man City might be playing in, depending on the punishment.
That could be the case. I think it could be quite a difficult scenario to appeal, but we'll have to wait and see. The Premier League has tried to organise it in such a way. I don't think that Manchester City would be able to go to CAS, for example, the Court for Arbitration for Sport. So it would have to be on something which happened during the course of the commission's hearing, which was not in line with the due process.
Kieran, throughout this trial process, 6 to 8 weeks, you say, will we at any point get to hear how it's going? Will any news be leaked, or will we get to hear anything, or is it literally going to be you won't know anything until it's over?
No, it's effectively going to be a sealed room. I mean, some of the leading cases in the country have said there is a very good case for having public disclosure and a public hearing in respect of this, so that people are allowed to observe how things are proceeding. And there's a great case for saying that sunlight is the best disinfectant for misfeasance and bad behaviour. And therefore, surely, given that we are all football fans and it does affect all of us, surely we should have some form of access.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Kieran, top man, mate.
Kieran.
Appreciate you coming on.
Cheers, bub.
Kieran Maguire there, financial football expert.
The Sports Bar with Jamie O'Hara and Jason Cundy. Monday to Thursday nights from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.